Hello, everyone. I'm Megan Rejman. Tonight, I'm guest hosting the Made from Scratch broadcast for Gabe Leal. I'm the host and creator of Sho-e-ate, Brainstorm in Progress, a podcast for the creatively minded, where I work through my guests' creative challenges, their creative blocks, actually, by using brainstorming techniques from the advertising industry, my former career. But tonight, on Made from Scratch, my guest is Erin Huizenga. Say hello, Erin. She's here somewhere. There she is.
Hello. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Let me introduce you. Erin is the co-owner and chief designer at Desklight, where they design transformative learning experiences by basically making learning more user-friendly. We'll get into that in a second, but first, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for joining us here on the Made from Scratch broadcast on LinkedIn Live. If you don't know already, you can catch the show here and on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Monday through Friday at 7 o'clock Central for compelling interviews with people who are creating great stories with their lives, and we share those stories right here. So, Erin, before we jump into your work, let's get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite mantra or life saying that you think explains how you view the world?
Yeah, that's a great first question. I think about it as just trying to be better tomorrow than today. Be better than yesterday, really. Just keep on keeping on, just slow and steady. Nothing great happens overnight. So that keeps me going.
Mm-hmm. I remember when we talked before tonight's show, you were saying it's like, it reminds you, it keeps yourself grounded in knowing why you're doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah. It's just, it helps remind you of, how you're just slowly chipping away at the goals that you have for yourself.
Right. I love that. What do you do for a living? I mean, I know, you do this thing with learning, and your website states that we design transformative learning experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We run Desklight. My husband and I run it together. We started it about 6 years ago. So, we specialize in creating great educational and learning experiences. So what does that mean? We do quite a bit of, bridging between the learner and the people that are looking to teach something. And that usually looks like training or educational materials, curriculum development, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you focus in on K through 12, university and adult learning, and also professional continuing training in professional environments, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So we look at lifelong learning as a value proposition for our partners, collaborators, and clients, where we don't specialize in just one of those typical silos. We feel like, especially nowadays, it's really relevant to work on early learning all the way through to professional development and trainings at a corporation or organization.
Right, because that's a continuous need, isn't it? Are you finding that happens a lot?
Yeah, more and more training and education is a value proposition, a benefit for employees, and of course, universities and K-12 environments. We're working with several clients right now, really trying to help them rethink what's next.
Mm-hmm. And when we spoke previously, you said that Desklight's reason for being is like a Venn diagram for human-centered design, learning design, or instructional design, and UX. What is human-centered design?
Yeah, that's a big question for many people, of course. But the heart of it is really talking to people about what they want and need, and making sure we weave all of that feedback into everything that we're making as a design studio. So, we discover what people want at the beginning before we really know what the deliverable should be or could be. And then we go back once we have figured out what could potentially be a deliverable. We go back and test those things with them, with the people that we talked to before. And then we recruit a few new people that are the audiences that this is meant to serve, this project is meant to serve, and we talk to them. So it's very learner-centered, everything that we're working to do. So we borrow from that human-centered design philosophy and process.
Yeah, that's nice. So it feels like it's more about discovery and let's learn instead of feel this pressure of like, no, we have to already know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Exactly. Yeah, it takes a bit of that burden off, as a design team to know that we can talk to people and make sure that we're weaving in their feedback and what they really need.
Yeah, I love this. I think I saw this on your website. You call it "We build with, not for."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another mantra for us at Dustlight, for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we don't want to just kind of build in a silo, right? And then kind of throw it over the fence, so to speak, and hope that it works. So we really want to make sure that it's, good and meaningful and equitable, all of those things. And we can't figure that out on our own. We have to talk to people about how they're thinking about things as we go.
Right. The second part of your Venn diagram was instructional or learning design. And what is that?
Yeah. You can think about, instructional design, learning design as a way to make learning happen, systematize learning. So if you think about a traditional textbook, for example, chapter 1, you study through, and then there's usually a test, and then you go on to chapter 2. And it's quite linear in its approach. And in our work, we're really looking to innovate around traditional instructional design, where we're thinking about how learners really want to learn right now. And that's, again, across the board, no matter what age people are. With the things that are available to all of us now, learning should and can look a lot different than it did historically.
Right. Yeah. The traditional methods were not always great for me. I can tell you that much.
Mm-hmm. For all of us, I think it's fair to say, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. Because it's when we were talking about it before, it seemed like instructional learning right now seems more authority-based learning than learner-based learning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all about, again, being learner-centered. So people are going to want different things out of a learning or a training. They come to it for different reasons, and so we talk to people to kind of really understand where is that coming from. Do you feel like you have to do this? Well, how can we make this better for you?
Right. And you do it because you felt like you had to do that because that's how you always traditionally approached it, or are you approaching it from some sort of intuitive place?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. And then the third part of your Venn diagram was UX design. And if you want to just speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so this is focused a bit more on the deliverable. So, digital toolkits or an experience of some kind. So, looking at, testing that and making it better, branding it, testing that, just really understanding how, as things come to life, how are they residing? How are they working? And that goes along with, prototyping, wireframing, coming up with, the actual deliverable, and then kind of going from there and figuring out how it should really function.
Mm-hmm. And so in the end, would you say you're trying to make learning more user-friendly, as I mentioned in the intro?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Our desire is really to, translate, if you will, as we were saying a little bit, but really translate between what people know and what people can know as learners. So usually that bridge isn't very good, right? It's sometimes quite broken. So we're really looking to bridge that and make the learning, more enjoyable, more user-friendly, and more fun and joyful. Yeah.
Yeah, you say something very interesting. You say that the bridge a lot of times is broken. Why do you think that is?
I think it's oftentimes very traditional. It's in its approach in terms of instructional design, like we've said. I think it is more systemic typically. If an organization, for example, wants to teach people something when people are coming into a job, they're going to think about what they need their new employees to do, right? So it's very systemically focused, very organizationally focused typically. But there's so much opportunity to really listen to what people really want and what the employees want and make it reside in them better. So it is almost like an employee benefit, and it's something that they're proud of and that they want to do again and again. It's something that, doesn't feel like a have to, but a want to.
Right. And before when we were talking, you were really kind of intermingling these two words of learning should be practical, but also joyful. And you kind of use them together as one synonymous understanding. And what do you mean by that when you say like this sense of practicality, but joyfulness in how to learn?
Yeah, I mean, I think other words are freedom. The learning can represent a form of freedom around, I'm here to learn this because I'm passionate about it, or I want to work for this particular place. And so, it represents this sort of autonomy of bringing things to yourself as you want them to. So as one project we worked on, we were really kind of reinventing how the more instructional designer would have approached the project by looking at, how could this be topic-based and how could this learning be bite-sized and relevant in the moment that they will need it? So, not assuming that they're going to need it at the moment that they're kind of going through this linear approach like traditional instructional design, but really popping in and letting them know, like, this is here for you when you need it and when you want it, and that's where the branding and UX stuff really comes into play. Like, let's make it really clear what's available to people here, and they will come to this knowledge when they're ready for it. And it's available to them, and that's where the joy comes in too. People want to feel that freedom to learn what they need when they need it. And oftentimes I think we assume that people don't know that, but they do. We all do, right?
Right. Everybody knows that. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that it's to make the learning more topic-based, so then it seems like it relates more directly to the human who needs to do the learning, rather than keeping it in this abstract space.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's abstract, right, it often becomes quite boring because it doesn't feel right and it doesn't feel applicable or necessary in that moment for us as people, as humans. And so if it feels relevant, it's going to ultimately be a lot more meaningful because it feels good. It feels like, okay, I wanted this, I'm pursuing this, and this is meeting me where I want to be.
How did you guys come up with the idea? Like, what problem are you solving? I mean, obviously you're solving some big ones that we've already discussed, but just in case we didn't address any additional.
Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, my husband and I, Chris and I, started the company about 6 years ago. And that's after having together about 25 years of consulting experience together and about 18 years or so of higher education teaching collectively between the two of us. So we initially started just wanting to do something around social impact. We wanted to use our consulting time to do things that we felt like were right and good, making the world a better place, as so many of us, are working to do. And then from there, we said, what do we really enjoy doing every day? What is the work that's sort of boiling to the top that we have done and that we enjoy the most between the two of us? And then what kind of team would we want to build around that kind of work once we really establish what that was? And every time we'd have, that sort of strategic conversation about the future, every time we would come back to education and learning because we felt like, well, we certainly have that background and we just love it. We love the people we get to work with every day. The kinds of people that are administrators and faculty and learning and development professionals. We love those people. So we thought, we want to just do more of this. So that's really how we came up with it.
Oh, that's so great. Because when we were talking before, we were talking about, it also seems so apropos because the environment is changing so much that learners are changing. So teachers have to change, and learners have changed in terms of because of access to technology and access to information. And you were saying some really interesting things about the idea of the teacher as an ambassador. Like, what did you mean?
We did talk about all of that for quite some time, didn't we? There's just so much to say about the future of learning these days, right? But some big points that we covered were this idea of teacher as facilitator or teacher as ambassador, as you said. Knowledge is available.
And how they're doing it now. Like, what does that look like if a teacher is more of an ambassador rather than? There's this idea of project-based learning where teachers can, give their students access to projects that are more real than something that's out of a textbook that, we all went through when we were younger. The idea of bringing in professionals, so facilitating that sort of planning, if you will, for students to have more face time with real professionals and things that they're interested in. Putting more ownership of the actual learning via some ed tech and technologies, of course, but putting more ownership of the learning onto the students as much as they're capable to do that. And then the teacher is then there as a ambassador of additional knowledge or, the idea of just facilitating group discussions among their peers, especially as students and learners get a little bit older and they have a little bit more autonomy and, maturity to be able to do those kinds of things. So,
the teacher as facilitator, they also have to be thinking about making sure that learners, and this is a whole nother conversation, but learners can come together and there's the consideration of equity and availability of technology, of course, that's a big theme. But just the idea that the teacher isn't solely responsible to teach everything and to know everything anymore, because students are digital natives. They can pick up on things pretty quickly, even on a mobile phone, right? So yeah, those are just a few things that just are changing rapidly, like day by day.
It makes it sound like it would be more of a collaborative experience rather than a authoritative down to telling people what to do.
Yeah, I think across the board, it's less, there's a phrase called sage on the stage, where it's a lecture-based format, right? Where you have a professional or a professor stand up on the stage and just talk at people for an hour or 2 hours, and sometimes, God forbid, 3 hours, in a lecture hall. And that's just not the future of learning anymore. It's more about peer-to-peer. It's more about bottom-up learning and having people available to, be ambassadors of what they can learn and push them where they can be pushed.
What are a couple of examples of projects that you guys have done that you could share with us that kind of helps explain your business in action?
Sure. Last year we had the great privilege to work with Techstars. It's a global tech accelerator based in Boulder, Colorado. And we met the director of education, and he said, I'm traveling quite a bit globally, and I'm kind of charged with this idea of how can we productize our educational offerings for the people that are part of our tech accelerator programs globally, but also how can we productize it for startup weekends, which they do for people that are sort of dabbling with the idea of entrepreneurship, and they might start their own businesses, but usually they're still working full time for someone else, or they haven't quite, jumped into their entrepreneurial ideas just yet. So we were solving for both of those Techstars audiences. And we, ultimately worked together for about 6-7 months, and we were able to build and productize a toolkit for Techstars that sits outside of their website. And it basically is topics that we curated. We were able to kind of help fill in some of the knowledge gaps that were there once we curated what the topics were, and working with our client to do that. Helped out with building additional videos a bit to fill in some of that. And we messaged the whole site, and we made the worksheets for the site. And now, fast forward, it was written up in Wall Street Journal. It was a really, really great thing for Techstars because it's available to anyone who wants to see it and view it and learn from it. So that is a pretty fun project to talk about, and a great toolkit example of some of the work that we do.
And just to clarify, you said productize, meaning so it's like you were able to kind of put them into these like training modules kind of thing?
Yeah. So there was a lot of offline learning, training going on where our client was flying a lot and giving the same content to the ambassador or the accelerator participants.
So repeating himself a lot.
Yeah, he was repeating himself a lot, and Techstars really wanted to think about, how do we know that, generally speaking, accelerator participants will learn essentially some of the same things, all of the same things, if they go through one of our programs. So this was a way for them to know that this was accessible and shared, equally across all of the accelerators and startup weekends.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so what was the Wall Street Journal article about?
Yeah, it was, so Techstars, their kind of mantra, we talked about mantra a couple times already tonight, but their mantra is give first. So this was an expression.
Give first?
Yep.
Wow.
So this is an expression of that for them. And the article was about how this was Techstars' manifestation of what learning for startup entrepreneurs can do and should be thinking about.
So spreading the knowledge.
Yeah.
And also, when we were talking before, you were talking about how your difference from sometimes working with other types of organizations like yours is that you build it and then you give it to them and then they can build from it from there instead of constantly having to come back to you.
Yeah, that's something, as a woman-owned business, that's something that I have thought about a lot and really wanted to make sure that we integrate into our work and how we approach client relationships and partnerships really the entire time we've had our own business. I want us to partner with the people that we partner with and build a great system for them, a great experience for them, no matter what it is and what the deliverable is. And then, train the team as much as we need to and they want us to in order to make sure that they can take this product or service or experience that we've made with them and carry it forward and just really add to it. Techstars continues to add topics to the toolkit that we made with them. So that's our hope in all projects, to make sure that everybody, obviously loves what we're doing with them as partners, but then that they're able to truly use it and carry it forward when we're wrapping up our project.
Yeah, because it really helps your clients really feel a sense of ownership of the end product.
Exactly.
You had another example that I thought was really cool. Is about Booth School.
Yeah. So another example of some work that we're doing is with University of Chicago Booth School of Business. So they're thinking about alumni and what they can do to really continue to help them when they graduate from Booth, such a great prestigious business school
at University of Chicago.
Yes. Yeah. So we've worked with them to think about how can they develop a toolkit for helping these young graduates of Booth to join nonprofit boards and kind of coming up with all of the curriculum that's based in faculty knowledge and making it really actionable. So maybe they have learned some of these things about, say, nonprofit management or other things in some of their business classes that are relevant to being on a board, but now it's relevant to them in a different kind of way, and we help them to we've created the curriculum so that they can go and learn from it right away when they need it and apply it in order to join a nonprofit board of their choice.
And it was a curriculum that helps you understand the steps to take if you want to join a nonprofit board, what that looks like, how to go about it, what kind of results you're looking for, like how to set up context so you understand what you're trying to get yourself involved with.
Yeah, we realized from talking to some of the students, there is this fear, and I think we'd all agree there's some fear as a young professional in joining a board because you don't really understand, which board you should join or how to function on a board. Like, how much money do you need to sit on a board? How much time do you need to dedicate? What are the legal implications to being on a board, which a lot of people really don't understand. And there's quite a few things that people need to know about their responsibility as a board member. So things like that, in addition to all the things that are in between those kinds of concepts.
That is fascinating because it's also very practical, and it really helps people with what's going on in their real lives rather than, again, another abstract concept that will it ever apply to their lives. Because it's like, who doesn't need that kind of advice, especially when you've gone to a school like University of Chicago? And I'm sure lots of nonprofit boards would be really interested in having these kind of people on their boards.
Exactly. Yeah. Such talented people graduating from Booth. Right. And another thing with that project is that as far as we know, and we could be wrong on this, but as far as we know, there's really nobody else offering that kind of value add or service to people that are looking to join boards nationally or even, perhaps globally in order to give their time and talent to help these nonprofits grow and thrive.
And what was the outcome of that project?
We're still working on it. We've gotten through, the initial wireframes and the strategy for the curriculum, and now we're writing the curriculum and ultimately going to deliver the toolkit in full bloom.
Great. All right. Well, then I'm going to want to hear about that later.
There you go. Yeah.
What's the best way for people to learn? I mean, I know you touched on it earlier that like you should have fun and it needs to be autonomous and.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of frameworks for, thinking about how people learn and behavioral analysis and understanding and things. But I think a fun way to think about it and what we say with clients a lot is, if you read something, then you retain it a little bit, right? If you talk about something, it's going to land a lot more effectively than even watching it, right? And then if you are able to teach it to somebody else, you're really going to retain it. So, the idea of how can you go through those 4 steps, if you will, and get to the opportunity of presenting to a learner. Well, okay, you can teach that back to your peer or back to your facilitator or faculty member in order to prove that you understand it. That's definitely the best way to retain the knowledge and showcase the fact that you know it.
And again, you also said, and it's good to have fun with it. It's good it's when it's a fun learning experience.
Exactly. Yeah. Teaching something back is sometimes pretty overwhelming, but once you realize you know it, it's super fun, right? No matter what it is, because it's rewarding. You're like, I can do this now. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And so is that the approach you guys use at Desklight when it comes to creating these training modules and these learning experiences for whoever is engaging with your products?
Yeah, that's one of the many things that we think about in terms of framing out how a project should flow and what the content should be. But I'd say that that's something that is high on the list to think about. How do you take the learners through the steps in order to make sure that it's enjoyable and joyful, as we've said.
Right. What advice? Okay, because I've got it's so inspiring that you've been doing this with your husband for over 6 years. And then I also know that you've done other startup work before in the past, and you've always been so positive. And, trying to start something is can be so challenging. What advice do you have for someone, for other people who want to start something, whether it's a company or they want to help create positive change in the world or whatever, but they have this word no stuck in their head, or, maybe they did create something, but now they're dealing with so many obstacles that they're wondering, should they be giving it up, or why did I do this in the first place? And is this all worth it? Like, what do you say to that?
Yeah. It's funny. I've never been the kind of person to, have that mindset of getting overwhelmed by a big project or even a deadline or entrepreneurial, endeavor. Sometimes I think it's personality types, and I'm not, somebody who, thinks something, overthinks something. And so for thinkers by personality type and communication type, sometimes it's extra challenging, right? But I just always think about it as, let's chip away at it. Tomorrow is a new day. If today feels really hard or like a failure day, that's okay. Tomorrow's a new day, and you can start again and chip away at it again.
That's amazing. So you don't have that mantra you don't have any of that negative thought and like, oh, I didn't succeed, and that self-critical voice of like, it's never good enough, or I'm blah, blah, blah.
There's certainly hard days, Megan, for sure, right? Where you're just like, I'm going to bed at 8:30 because I am done. Yeah.
And I remember too, when we talked about this before, because I find this very fascinating about you, that it's like, this is a personality trait of yours, because I have known you before we even had you on the show tonight. And I loved how you said, I love being able to look back on a project a year from there and say, well, I'm glad I didn't quit. I think there's a lot to be said about that. That's like, sometimes it's more important, that saying, it's like more important to try than never try at all.
Yeah. It's so true, right? Like, what are you going to lose if you keep going another, day, another month, another 6 months? But then, if you continue to build something that you feel like people really need and want, in those 6 months, you can look back. It's especially great to journal, I think, too. It's a great tool. And you can look back and say, wow, I'm really glad I didn't quit back then when I was so close to saying, I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah.
I love that line. I think that should be an affirmation you put on your refrigerator or whatever, and just say, I'm really glad I didn't quit.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to, since we, are LinkedIn Live and we are connected to the professional community here on LinkedIn, if there was someone out there in the professional community of LinkedIn and they wanted to reach out and connect with you for some reason with your organization, like what's the best kind of connection you could be making right now? Like, is it more clients, or is it, staff, or is it a certain type of other kind of connection, or like, what are you really feeling like you need, or you would like more of right now, or?
Yeah, I think top of the list, and we talked about this a little bit, is, companies, corporations that are really looking at training as a value for their employees. So we worked with McGraw-Hill last year, and it was just an awesome partnership. We worked with the YMCA of the USA, national org based in Chicago, and we'd love to do more of that work in addition to the university work and some of the other projects that we're working on, because I do feel like, as things change for how the future of work is starting to be talked about, I believe more and more every day that education and what a job can give and gift to people is more and more important.
And does it matter what size the company is? Does it make a difference if it's a certain size or not? Or you're like, take it all on?
Well, we usually don't work with small businesses. We usually work with businesses that are, mid to larger size, and organizations, nonprofits that are mid to large size. We don't work with individuals. Typically, we haven't. So yeah, I'd say mid to large size company and organizations is our sweet spot.
And Erin, if somebody wanted to be able to get in touch with you, what's the way that they can connect with you?
Well, I love what's here on the screen. Dustlight Learning is our URL, so you can check out a little bit more about us and some of the additional projects we've been working on there. And then LinkedIn is great. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and send me a message or a connect, and I'd be happy to talk a little bit more.
All right. Well, that's very exciting. I think Gabe is going to come join us for a little while because, he always loves to come in and say hello.
Yes, I do. I always do, ladies. And that's one of the most fun parts about doing your own show is you get to hop in every now and then and say hello to the audience and everybody that's watching. So it's been a really interesting conversation.
Yeah. What do you think?
One of the questions that, that was just for me when I was hearing you ladies talk. So what would you do if somebody came to you and said, you know what, we like what you're doing. How would you scale this up on a larger level? If somebody said, it's what you're doing is really impacting. There's a lot of results that we see that can actually be translated to other places, other parts, other countries. Have you ever thought about that idea about scaling it up at some point if somebody were to be interested in wanting to learn more about Desklight and turning it into something that can be integrated in other areas, other schools? Because that's one of the things that I am very passionate about is the fact that education, the way that we go through it now, is so antiquated with what we do and how we teach people. I mean,
Are you thinking mostly elementary schools and college? Or
I'm talking about both, because you're talking about the education system does not stop once you graduate high school. It keeps going. So, I mean, my whole thing was, why would you stop at just high school whenever you can change just about everything? Because again, one of the things that I had talked about was they don't teach you they teach you so much more when you get into college, more about the strict part of book knowledge and learning these things, instead of having people who are, say, entrepreneurs, kind of like yourself, teaching these people about what it means to actually go out and use that knowledge, instead of waiting to graduate after 4 years, $100,000 of college student loan debt, and then go say, hey, go figure out how to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my reaction to that question is, yeah, teaching is exponential, right? So that's why we've taught so much over the years, and we continue to love teaching, because you're gifting that knowledge for the students to go on and move forward with it and apply it as much as they want to and need to, like you're saying. And yeah, we've done quite a bit of capacity building. I didn't talk about that kind of work too much tonight, but we've done a lot of capacity building with K-12 teachers and districts, as well as with organizations that are looking to integrate design and think about, how can we upskill ourselves in order to apply some of these processes and thoughtfulness around, designing things internally that can ultimately lead to better things for learners. So yeah, and we have some product ideas in mind that we might be publishing soon, but I'm not going to talk too much about that.
Yeah.
When you say capacity building, what does that mean?
Coming in and working with a team to, teach them how to do more of these things on their own. So, applying human-centered design internally in order to make better products come to life. Working with students to apply human-centered design to their work every day or to their school. Like, how can they change something and feel empowered at their school to make a difference on their own without having to ask permission, those kinds of things. So
the learning feel more alive.
Yeah.
So, because one of the things that interests me, what you're saying and what you're doing is, imagine custom designing an education system to tailor it towards whatever the community is, right? Mm-hmm. Because some communities might be stronger. I mean, they have statistics to look at to say, okay, our students are passing and reading very well. They high here, high here, high here, high here. Math, we're here, mathematics or science or whatever they're going through. And that would be an interesting subject to look at, because taking those statistics, you can actually base a lot of your curriculum and how you change things on the data that they're already essentially collecting right now anyway. I mean, that would be an interesting way to look at it, because again, I say our education system, if we're going to change the world, if we wanted to change to the way that we think, the way that we are positively, if we want to create a way to make ourselves economically stronger, we're going to do that by education. I mean, that's it's always floored me that not enough attention is paid to that, and we leave it to the kids themselves to say, okay, well, you got to figure it out. I mean, one of the good things here that I've said that COVID has brought is the fact that they've had to change the way that they look at education, at least in some capacity, that they have to go, okay, now we're using Zoom calls, we're using different things. Teachers have to look at curriculum, how they're going to train it, how it's based, how all these things are done. Because again, you're taking the in front aspect of being a teacher in front of a classroom now, and you're having to translate it and teach it to kids now who are watching it on video. So to me, that's at least a step in thinking outside of the box. And it's not because we wanted to, it's because we were forced to. But hopefully, going forward, I hope that they would at least take that same concept and look and say, we need to look at every aspect of education, because there are people like you out there who are wanting to help change the way that we teach the next generation, because again, they're the ones who are going to make or break the society as we go forward. Because again, my time is finite. But the kids who are right now in school trying to figure out how to do college, how to do all these things, we're teaching them to go, hey, people are saying it more and more and more and more. The fact that, don't take on the big part of student loan debt, right? That's one of the big things that, based on whatever your trade is going to be, whatever you're going to be when you get out of college, right? If you're going to spend $100,000 to get an education to be a teacher, not that teaching is not honorable, but look at how it's going to develop it as far as once you get out of college. How much are we making as a teacher to go back and have to take care of that debt instead of basing the tutorial way that you teach off of, hey, a teacher, this is how much it would cost you to be a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a couple, a small example and a kind of a large example based on everything you're saying. The quick small example is we worked with a school district last year in Colorado, and they were open and ready to get feedback from their high school students to understand, what do you guys really need before you graduate from high school? And we helped them come up with a whole new curriculum series around life skills, because they said, we need budget classes. We need to know how to like run our life when we're done with high school, and especially after college. And so the school district was ready and willing to craft that curriculum and spend that extra time to be able to do that, which was really cool and really amazing. And then the larger story is there's a district in Colorado, it's Cherry Creek District, and they have a ground up innovation center for the high school students with several pathways around, you know, business and healthcare and engineering and, you know, building. They're making tiny homes for a local, you know, people, homeless folks in Denver. And this place itself is just amazing to see what they're doing. And their data is just equally impressive to actually standing in the building and seeing the beauty and the access that the students have to all this learning. But they're graduating the students out of high school and getting them job ready to work at Denver International Airport in their aviation program, to work, you know, right out of school in some kind of automotive industry job. And you know, they are doing it, and it's very provocative for some, but it's amazing to really see and understand how they've done this work. So I echo what you're saying about, you know, how can we get around some of these big questions that we have about getting students what they need, but also investing well in the you know, universities that we do have that have such good value propositions, and helping students really understand why they would go there and spend the time and resources that they would invest in that experience to know their why, you know. So there's so many cool things happening around helping students to understand their why.
Yeah, and that's really essentially what I like to talk about focusing on, because again, comparing it to this, if you have somebody who goes into college at 18, right, and they go into college at 18, they spend 4 years in college, right, and and that's if they know exactly what they want to do in college, first of all, right? If they say, okay, this is what I'm going to be concentrated on, center, I'm not changing majors, I'm not doing anything else, I'm going in here to do this, and that's what I want to concentrate on. So you're talking about 4 years into it, whereas opposed to somebody who came out of high school at 18, went into a trade, like say an electrician. In 4 years, he could become a journeyman electrician and be making at that point almost anywhere from $27 to $32 an hour based on a trade, as opposed to spending 4 years in college and walking out with, again, average about $60,000 worth of debt before you even made one dime. And of course, you still have Uncle Sam to worry about, so you can not run away from that at any point, because unless you go find an employer who's going to say, okay, well, we do compensation based, you know, employment here, we can pay back some of your loans, or we can help you while you're schooling, that sort of thing. If you don't find those kinds of places in your life where you're working along in college, I think it's something that we should at least take a look at and saying, hey, if we start the process at least in high school, saying, hey, if you wanted to start getting used to doing trade, to look at the option, because not everybody is based to go to college. Everybody's not going to have the want or the need, but there's some people out there that says, you know what, I would love to learn how to do a trade. I mean, they do it all the time. People just go out there and start getting into a trade. I mean, I know, because I'm connected with a lot of electricians. A lot of them tell me, you know, I didn't spend a nick of time in college, yet here I am 10 years down the road. I'm a master electrician and I'm making $50 an hour. I mean, tell me, you know, that's going to be the same route for somebody who goes into college. And again, this is a guy who you're talking about. Once you get out those 10 years, you're not owing debt. You're not owing anything else except what you've created and what you've earned that whole time. Plus,
Mhm.
it gives you a lifetime skill to go just about anywhere and apply it anywhere. And
I think it always goes back to that why. Why are students investing their time and where they want to go and what they want to do. And now more than ever, there's more resources for people to figure that out and figure out what pathway is best for them, what's going to serve them really well.
Yeah, and I think the sooner the better. And that's all I want to do is just really concentrate on either looking at ways or solutions to say, hey, this is we can start early on. I don't know, gosh, I don't want to say psych evaluations for children, but or some sort of way to see what are their strengths and what are the things that they see that are very strong, and kind of gearing those people in that direction of interest. Hey, because right now one of the big things is kids are playing video games. Well, here's the thing about video games, right? People who create them get paid a lot of money. They code, they learn how to do coding, they go how to do these things. So why isn't that like a really major skill set? Because again, not coding is not just used for it's not just used for creating video games. Code is used for what I'm using right now. Somebody created a code and said, you know what? I know how to write a code. I know how to put together. I know how to do an open API. I know how to open all of these things in here because somebody took the time to learn it. And I would hope that these are some of the avenues that we can go out and start teaching in our classrooms, besides just learning how to do standardized tests. It drives me nuts sometimes that I see my own children's work and it's based off of standardized tests, to go and say that's how you're going to create a curriculum and that's how you're going to base your education. I mean, I can go ask my kids about history. They won't have the foggiest clue. But that was one of the things that I grew up in, because I think, of course, history was part of what we learned, because again, they figured back then that, hey, history is going to be our greatest teacher. Tell us.
The standardized testing, it's still very much present in so many districts across the country, but it's present because we haven't quite figured out what the new system is for vetting understanding, right?
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to some of the stuff we were saying earlier, where people are trying to kind of figure out how do we know what our learners know. So until we have a better solution to that, we're not going to be able to completely throw out the standardized test systems that so many students have to go through. However, more and more businesses now are starting to say, we're not going to look at your test scores out of high school. We're not going to, look at your GPA from high school and college necessarily in order to know if you're a good fit for this job. And so I think that's an interesting thing that's happening too right now, where businesses are willing to take a look at other things outside of these quantitative analyses of people that are coming in to interview for jobs. So, that also is disrupting what is happening for younger kids too, and what people are going to be willing to look at as new criteria for how they can interview well, and how they know if they're going to be a good fit, if this candidate is going to be a good fit for this organization.
Yeah, so awesome. What a wonderful thing to at least be trying to focus on doing in the educational system. Because again, my whole thing is if you just sit and do nothing, you're going to get a lot of the same. And I think the key to just about anything, to improving your life skills, improving your financial skills, to improving your mental health skills, it all takes education. And I think that the earlier on that you start them in the process of wanting to learn and making learning interesting and making learning fun, instead of it just being going, this is what you have to do. We're going to do ABC test every day, or we're working on these sort of things. I mean, to me, interactive learning has been the best way for me. And I don't know if that's for everybody, but for me, interactive learning, being hands-on and seeing what is happening in front of me, has been one of the best things for me to go, okay, ding, it sticks in my head, and go and I'm able to remember these sort of things as opposed to saying, okay, I just read it in a book.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Many people are visual learners. Many people can read it and memorize it right away. I mean, it's a gift, right? I'm just thinking about how different people, process information and ultimately retain information. And there's a lot of different learning styles that need to be considered in, the traditional classroom. So that's certainly a really big part of the consideration set.
We do. No, that's awesome. I love the fact that Megan, you look for these individuals out in the world, and even Jackie last time, that was very interesting about what she's gone through and what she's doing to help. Just trying to help. In that's what I mean by saying making an impact. Is you don't have to have millions of dollars. You don't have to do all of these convoluted things to go out there and simply make an impact. It's just you taking the time to say, you know what, I see a problem, I see a need, I want to help address it, and what can I do to make it better? Sometimes it's just that simple, but I think a lot of people will say, well, you're trying to. I mean, one of the things I was talking about last night with the gentleman I had on was law enforcement, and he has a different take about how to look at it. But again, that's one of the things that I said was, at least look at it from a different angle. You're going to find things that, I was floored by the interview because he quit his job. This guy literally quit his job after what happened up in Minnesota, right? And he went through a lot of things, but he's got a different perspective on it because he's got the perspective of it from when he was young, how he was, how he was harassed by police. And then he actually became part of this. Well, he thought he was becoming part of the solution to say, okay, I can make this better. And then you see this big force of what the system is. And the same thing, I think it's with education. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to go make change. It's fighting that uphill battle, but at least in my heart, I love that there's people out there who are willing to take on that challenge. We don't all have to agree on how it is. It's just the fact that you're doing it. And for me, that's why I'm glad that Megan spotlighted you.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
yes.
Thanks for saying that. Yep.
Yeah, because my friend is the same way. My friend wants to help change the educational system. He's very passionate about it as well. And at least we have all these people wanting to look at that problem and say, we're unsatisfied with the way it is now. And for me, that's any kind of step like that, any kind of person like that, I will hold in really high esteem and regard, because you're looking at it and saying, okay, what I can do can make an impact on so many other people's lives. I mean, what you're doing is changing kids' lives out there and helping them change the course of what their life could be. And for me, that's the golden nugget in all of this, is being able to do that. So thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you so much.
I love showing that. So guys, if you're not connected with Erin, let me pull it up real quick. You can connect with her on LinkedIn, right? And I'll pull up her website as well. But where is it at? What did I do? Here it is. Okay, that's her website right there. So if you go there, you can check it out. It's at https://desklightlearning.com. Go in there and you check out. And you can see some of the different areas that she does. They do the creative process of tailoring education. So that's one of the good things, and they can create programs based that way. And then you can also check her out on LinkedIn. If you can see it at the bottom there, it's scrolling, and then I also have it in the comments. So if you want to go back and connect with her on LinkedIn, please do. I put the link in there so you guys can reach out to her. And of course, thank you again to my wonderful co-host, Miss Megan. You're always, anytime you want, you're always welcome to come back, because
thank you.
I love what you do. So and if you can connect with her and check out her podcast as well. And the link is also in the description as well. So just click on the link. You can go to her Apple Podcast, check out her past episodes. She's rocking it. Again, like I said, I went checking out the sites the last couple of days, and a lot of good episodes.
Thank you.
You know, and just real
Working
quick.
for people's creative blocks so they can all keep doing what they need to do.
Yeah. So just real quick before we get out of here, your process on how you come up with your topics. What are some of the things that you go through to say, okay, I want to do a show on this? Do you just pick a topic, or do you say you find something that you are passionate about and that's what you go base it off of?
No, it's all based on my guests, what they're going through. So
Wow.
the show is completely built around them. And people approach me for all sorts of different reasons. And so those shows are authentic. Those people really came to me with that real issue to work through.
Wow. Well, that's
great.
great.
A lot of times when I get those guests and they're like, yeah, I want to work on this. I'm like, sure, we'll work on that. And then I leave the meeting. I'm like, I'm going to work on that. What do I? But use the creative process method used from years in advertising of how you brainstorm and how you come up with, how do you ideate in an advertising agency, and how do you do it for big brands? And I apply it to people's creative blocks.
Awesome, man, that is great. You know, because I was listening to a few episodes and I go, okay, that's interesting how she approaches the way that somebody poses their problem first one, and then how to break it down and how to. Because I know, because I write, so I understand the process of feeling. Sometimes I call it being creatively constipated sometimes, because I love to write, but sometimes there is just a wall in front of you, and you go, look, I have this idea, but I can't get it to formulate. What are some of the ways that we can get it out there and break it down? And I think that's what helps, is what you do, is you say, okay, look, let's look at a problem and let's see how we can do it. And you have a system.
Set up a context. We look in relationship with what else is going on. So then you can then start seeing where there are patterns that you can pick up and relook at that maybe would help them. Interesting.
I'm going to have to go on one of your shows one of these days with one of my products. That's always. So we're going to set that up. So anybody and everybody, thank you again so much, Megan. Thank you, Erin, for both of you taking the time out of your evenings and having a wonderful conversation. You know, we will definitely be doing this again. And again, good luck, Erin. And I'm going to put all the stuff in the links as well, how people can connect with you. And, you know, I hope nothing for the best, because, again, I love people who have a good heart and are compassionate and want to go out and change the world. And
thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you again, Megan.
Fun.
Being with us. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Say good night, and I will see you guys here. Actually, I got another show in 30 minutes. So thank you guys so much. I just love doing this. So, all right, guys, I'll catch you here in a little while. Erin and Megan, I will catch you again soon. So everybody, thank you so much, and good night.
Good night.